The Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal, stood at the precipice. His political future and perhaps the fate of his Aam Aadmi Party, or AAP, hung precariously in the balance. The recent sedition charges against him had sent shockwaves through the nation, plunging Delhi into a state of uncertainty and apprehension. Kejriwal, a figure known for his anti-establishment stance and his unwavering commitment to the common man, found himself entangled in a legal battle that could potentially dismantle his political career. The charges stemmed from his vocal criticism of the central government's policies, particularly those related to the controversial farm laws. His arrest had sparked widespread protests and ignited a fierce debate about freedom of speech and the right to dissent. As the nation waited with bated breath, the question remained: would Kejriwal be granted bail, or would he be forced to languish behind bars, his political aspirations dashed against the rocks of legal constraints? The arrest of Arvind Kejriwal came as a bolt from the blue. Early on the morning of May 5, 2024, a team of police officials arrived at his residence and took him into custody. The charges leveled against him were grave sedition, conspiracy, and inciting public unrest. The authorities alleged that Kejriwal's fiery speeches and his relentless criticism of the government had crossed the line, inciting violence and posing a threat to national security. The arrest was met with immediate outrage from AAP supporters and civil society groups, who condemned it as a blatant attempt to silence dissent and muzzle the opposition. Kejriwal's party colleagues rallied behind him, denouncing the charges as fabricated and politically motivated. They accused the ruling party of using state machinery to suppress any voice of opposition and to create an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. The bail hearing of Arvind Kejriwal was nothing short of a national spectacle. The courtroom was packed to capacity, with lawyers, journalists, and political observers jostling for space. Outside, a sea of AAP supporters had gathered, chanting slogans and demanding the immediate release of their leader. The prosecution presented its case with vigor, arguing that Kejriwal's speeches were inflammatory and had the potential to incite violence. They pointed to instances where his words had allegedly led to protests and clashes with the police. The defense, on the other hand, maintained that Kejriwal's statements were well within the bounds of free speech and that he had never advocated for violence. Legal experts weighed in on the matter, with opinions divided on the merits of the case. Some argued that the sedition law was being misused to stifle dissent, while others believed that Kejriwal's rhetoric had indeed crossed a line. The arrest and subsequent bail hearing of Arvind Kejriwal triggered a wave of public outcry and sent tremors through the political landscape of India. Social media platforms were abuzz with discussions about the case, with hashtags related to Kejriwal trending for days on end. Opposition parties came out in support of Kejriwal, condemning the arrest as an assault on democracy and freedom of expression. They accused the government of attempting to create a one-party state and of silencing any voice that dared to question its policies. This is not just an attack on Arvind Kejriwal, but an attack on the very foundations of our democracy, said Rahul Gandhi, leader of the Indian National Congress. The public reaction was largely sympathetic towards Kejriwal, with many viewing him as a victim of political vendetta. Protests erupted in several cities, with people taking to the streets to express their solidarity with the AAP leader. As the nation watched with bated breath, the Supreme Court of India stepped in to deliver a crucial verdict. In a landmark judgment, the court granted interim bail to Arvind Kejriwal, acknowledging the need to protect the right to free speech and dissent. The court observed that while criticism of the government was permissible, it should not cross the line into inciting violence or hatred. It also emphasized the importance of upholding democratic values and ensuring that the voices of dissent were not silenced. The interim bail came as a huge relief for Kejriwal and his supporters, who saw it as a victory for freedom of expression and a setback for the government's attempts to suppress dissent. However, the legal battle is far from over, and Kejriwal still faces the prospect of a trial. The implications of this case extend far beyond the fate of one individual. It has raised fundamental questions about the limits of free speech, the role of the judiciary in protecting democratic values, and the future of dissent in India.